So if you look at that banner over there, May, creativity. Big topic, right? Big topic. And so what I want you to know about creativity is that we're not talking about being talented, because being creative is simply what you are. And so it's not creativity as an adjective, it's creativity as a noun. And being able to understand that in spite of what you believe about yourself, or in spite of what kind of barriers that you have built up with regards to owning the majesty of what we are, that we are still creative beings. So we are creative. We are creativity in expression and in form. And so what stands in the way of that? What gets in the way? What clogs the filter, so to speak, of our understanding of what it is that we are to do here? And sometimes when we talk about the fears that get in the way, we toss around this word courage. And I admit to you, and I've admitted on several occasions, that I struggle with the word courage. Because if what we're aspiring to is courage, then what we're doing is we're also holding in place its polarity, which is the fear that we need to have the courage for. And so what if we bypassed courage? What if courage wasn't the ultimate goal, but what if owning our creativity was the ultimate goal? And I finally found a quote yesterday that substantiated my ideology around the idea of courage. And it was from Byron Katie. And she said, "Courage is not required once you understand the nature of the universe." I love that. Courage is not required once you and I understand the nature of the universe. So what is the nature of the universe? The nature of the universe in and of itself is creativity. The whole month's theme. That is the nature of the universe. And as a being of that universe, and as absorbed in that which is creation itself, we are walking, breathing creativity. And so to aspire to something like courage is keeping a placeholder then for one of the fallibilities, or the things that stand in the way of letting that creativity express, and that's fear. So our fear then is one big, great misunderstanding. You ever had a misunderstanding? So your fear is a great big misunderstanding. And what do we usually do then about misunderstandings? Hopefully, as we go and correct them. So that becomes the aim today. So for what this universe is a field of energy that is your perfect servant. So where are we? We are a part, let's do a little cosmological lesson here. Where are we? We are in the universe. So that means that we are a part of that which is creative. And the energy of this universe is a perfect servant. And that means that then within every moment, you and I are the one with the power to make that moment be whatever it is that we desire it to be by the way in which we engage in and the use of deliberate energy. Do you understand? If the universe is our willing servant, it waits then. That energy waits then for our guidance. So if our guidance is prompted from fear, then it moves into the direction of something fearful, and it brings to us that manifestation. If our motivation is one of mustering up courage, it will take us beyond maybe the current limitation of fear, but it doesn't really catapult us into a new way of being. But if our directive, if the universe is this willing servant engaged in the way in which we operate energy, then if we take a stand and we own the fact that we are creative beings, always creating, then it waits for us to quantum leap beyond the boundaries of what we have settled for, or what anybody around us has settled for. And so it means that to be creative and to have this confidence of our creativity is to begin to understand that the universe waits. It waits in expectancy for our direction. And so to clear this misunderstanding of our fear, one would have to start to ask some of the following questions. One is, have you suffered enough? You may laugh, but if we don't immediately in this moment, then course correct the way in which we engage with the universe and use that energy, then the answer would actually be what? No. Because it means that we're not interested enough. Let me change that. We're not invested enough. We're not invested enough in moving into the ownership of being creative. Right? Creative as a noun. Because if we had suffered enough, then suffering as we know it would end when? Now. So just think about that. It's not a right or wrong statement. It's just an observation. It's an observation about how we view ourselves and what we actually think is possible. And Dr. Ken said it beautifully last week. He was using the illustration with Karen and with Mary Jane. And he said, because they were both practitioners on duty last week, and he said, if I asked them to go get a glass of water, they would go get a glass of water for him, and he would drink that. And he would have full confidence that they would carry out the task. He wouldn't micromanage it and follow them into the kitchen to make sure that they got a container and that the liquid actually went into the container and that they didn't spill it on the way, And so he had full confidence in letting that particular thing go. But when we ask the universe for water, the universe which is the willing servant, in other words, when we cast our prayer onto the waters of universal energy, we don't have as much faith in that as we do as with Karen and with Mary Jane. Do you understand? Because we want to micromanage that. So, in other words, when we make that declarative statement, when we have this definitive idea of the desire and we state that, we don't have as much faith, as Dr. Ken said, in God as we do in Karen and Mary Jane. That made them feel really good, actually, last week. But think about that, because we micromanage that. And there's been tons of illustrations that point to that out over and over again. So the same thing is that when we go into a restaurant and we place an order with the waiter or the waitress, we don't then get up and follow them into the kitchen and micromanage every detail about what it is that we ordered. We usually speak that order. We then let it go in that moment. That's the true meaning of let it go. Let it go means we speak it, and already we have the expectancy that what we spoke will come to fruition. There is no micromanagement. So when we ask, have we suffered enough? What is the suffering? The suffering is the actual belief in the fear greater than the pacification or the manifestation of what we're saying that we want. We believe more in the thing that promotes the fear than we do in the result of that, which is the other polarity, the manifestation, the ease, the calm, the love. And so we have to look at these things, because they're titillating questions, but they're very sobering questions too. If you and I are being pressed into a new quantum way of being, and I believe that we are. So have you suffered enough? To clear the misunderstanding of fear, we have to ask ourselves these questions. Have you suffered enough? Have you kept yourself small long enough? Or do you still need to carry that through a little bit more? So, small our reality, most of us will probably have to continue to be small in some regard in certain sections of our life, if we're going to be really honest. But what is the option? As a creative being, as creation itself, you are living, breathing creation in and of itself. And you and I are interrelating with that energy which knows no bounds, no limits, that knows nothing of pre-existing conditions. Right? And so as we look at that, have we kept ourselves small long enough? It's a question to ask ourselves. The next one, have you tasted limitation deeply enough to know that you want these things no longer? Have you tasted your own limitation deeply enough so that you can begin to expel that taste out of your mouth and you no longer wish to partake of that. This is the way in which we clear up the misunderstanding of fear. These are powerful questions, aren't they? Have we really reached that? For on just the other side of these things, which are illusion, is the freedom and the peace that you and I seek. Would you be willing to patiently and compassionately choose the dissolving of these illusions? So what we come to understand is that in our humanity, we are tied to this thing called incrementality. I just made up that word. We are tied to the concept of incremental, all right? And I checked myself on this. I corrected myself only because there were about 9 of us in an education summit over the weekend that David Aurelio referred to. And it was Karen Ratz that gave me the polarity of incremental, which was exponential. And so we think that our progress, our healing, our revelation of truth for ourselves must come incrementally because we have what behind us? All of this suffering, all of this limitation, all of this story. And so it's the concept that because we have accumulated so much, that in order for us to get to our power or our enlightenment, we have to incrementally get there because we're carrying so much baggage. And so that means that as we incrementally move in the other direction, we then take a few things out of the bag and leave it. But exponentially, what do we have the option to do? Just drop the bag. Just drop the bag, right? I love the story or the analogy of the fact that if we went to the riverbed and we took a rock out of the riverbed that had been in there for hundreds of years and we sat the rock into the sun, that it would not take hundreds of years for the rock to dry out, that it would be maybe a matter of hours. And so whatever it is that we have been submerged in terms of illusion, all one really need do, and you just have to comprehend this. I'm not saying that you will master this today, but if you comprehend this, all one really need to do is to do what? To get out and to put ourselves into the illumination, to put ourselves into the light of all this universal truth, and let ourselves dry out for a little bit. And then become in this place of mastery where we are dictating the way in which this universal energy is going to work for us. Comprehend that. Comprehend what it means to be self-mastery. So it isn't incremental so much as it is exponential. That we just quantum leap in terms of the way in which we begin to understand things. So with creativity, we've so much tied creativity into the adjective, meaning that, as Scott was saying, that we align that with artistic expression. But what you are as a being is creative. You are creating every single day, just as you are loving every single day. And so, do we love 100% of the time? No. But what we are is love. And so to the degree that we express the love is the degree in which we are authentic. But when we hate, grudge, fear, all the other stuff, we are just putting a mask over our authenticity, but it doesn't mean that we are no longer love. So it's the same thing with creativity. What you and I are is creation. And as creation, which is what? Unlimited. We are walking around all the time creating, being creative, expressing creativity. So to the degree that we have denounced our creativity in comparison and said, well, my creativity isn't what theirs is, and so I must not be creative. Or in other words, we simply then begin to hold back the intuitive urge that is prompting us to be more than what we're expressing now. It doesn't mean that you have stopped being creation in this form. It just means that you and I, through our own deliberate act, have put a veil over that, or submerging that. So when we think about creativity just in terms of being able to express, there was a psychiatrist by the name of Albert Bandura who was very famous in working with people to alleviate them, to help them with phobias. You know, people got phobias. And what he would do through incremental work is he would get them to meet their phobia in order to see that the fear that they had was unsubstantiated. And once they met the fear, then they would move into what he began to describe as self-efficacy. And self-efficacy, the word efficacy, simply means effectiveness, to become effective as self. And he was a master at this, and it was documented that he helped thousands and thousands of people overcome these phobias. So, for example, if you had a phobia about a snake, he would sit with you in the room and he would say, I just want you to know that there's a snake in the other room. And then the person would break out into hives and sweats, and he would talk to them, and he would say, it's in the other room, though. And then somehow he would talk to them in order to stand up and go to the doorway between the other room. And he would get them and he would say incrementally, I just want you to know that the snake is in there, but we're here. We're here, and so there is this doorway. And then somehow he would get them to open the door, and he would say, the snake's still in the other room, but I'm going to give you this glove. And it would be one of those big sort of gloves that you deal with wild reptiles. And then the person would have these surgical gloves on. And then he would say, now I'm going to ask you to step into the next room where the snake actually is, but you got your gloves. And he would get them all the way up to the point where they would be able to actually go and to hold the snake. And he said, I knew that self-efficacy had happened with this person when they would look at the snake and they would go, oh my God, look how beautiful the pattern is. Look at the beauty of their hide, their skin, whatever they have. Look at that massive tongue. Oh, no. So he was world-renowned at being able to turn fear into what he said familiarity. And I loved that when I was looking at him this week, being able to turn fear into familiarity, because to me, that's the same thing as dissolving the illusion. What is the illusion? What is the thing that puts the veil over our ownership of being creative? What is that? So if it's not being good enough at what? At what? If it's comparing ourselves to other people, comparing ourselves in what way? And when we can begin to define those things, then we can put our gloves on, and we can walk to the threshold of whatever that comparison is, and we can step into it, and we can begin to achieve this thing of self-efficacy and look at that fear and allow that dissolution to begin to dissolve. If my fear is a fear of death, well, let me just help you right there. We're all going to do it, okay? And we will all do it in a particular time and in a particular way. But until we begin to understand that what we are as creation does not die, it just continues to what? Expand, not just live, not just crawl incrementally, to exponentially do what? Explode into great, bigger realms of expression. I don't want to hang around in this all that long. My goal isn't, can I live to be 118? It's, can I maximize the time that I have now? Can I maximize my expression as creation, creating and giving creativity to its utmost degree now, rather than waiting when I retire, rather than waiting when the debt is gone, rather than waiting when the kids are in college, rather than waiting when the roof is fixed, rather than waiting when that right person comes and makes me whole. Rather than waiting, being that creation now. That's creativity through us in its finest form. And so the universe is a field of energy that is your perfect servant, reflecting to us every single thing that we think. So that means what? If we do not like then what is around us, what the harvest is, the daily harvest, not just a seasonal harvest, but a daily harvest, if I don't like what I'm harvesting, I have the opportunity, because I am creation itself, to do what? To change. And if I need to change incrementally, then so be it. But I'm going to tell you, we have options. We have options. If I need to move in the way in which Albert Bandura would do with his patients and their phobias, then so be it. That in and of itself is progress. But I want you to know that you self-regulate the pace by which you take your ownership of what you are back. You and I become the master by which we dissolve the illusion. You don't have to wait for any other intercessor. You don't have to wait for the next book or the next wisdom sage. You don't have to wait for the next retreat. You don't have to wait for next Sunday. You don't have to wait for anything other than your decision to take that ownership back. And so Eckhart Tolle said, you are the universe expressing itself as a human for a little while. You are the universe expressing itself as a human for a little while. That in no way diminishes the capacity by which you can express the universe. So there are people on the planet expressing the universe in what degree? My God, massive degrees. Again, that in no way dictates your quality or your opportunity of creativity. Your creativity does not have to look like an Elon Musk. Your creativity does not have to match a Steve Jobs. Your creativity doesn't have to be the same as Perlman, the violinist. Your creativity is yours. And the way in which you exhibit that then is the way in which you and I become in alignment for what we came to be. So what happens when we forget that? What happens when the fear becomes more predominant than owning our universal nature? What can you and I do? Incrementally, in the moment, when we are having that conflict, I want you to start to ask yourself this question. What is this moment for? So in the moment of the disruption, in the moment of forgetfulness, I want you to stop and I want you to go, what is this moment for? Because by asking that question, we do what? We lift ourselves out of the problem, even for a few seconds, and we take mastery back because we then become the observer of the behavior rather than being the servant of the behavior. We become the master of the behavior. So what is this moment for? What do I decree this moment to be? In other words, decide. What do I decide this moment to be? So if I'm in a moment of disruption, if I'm in a moment of fear, then I get to go, what do I decide this moment to be? So rather than having this moment be fully about the fear, I can decide for this moment to be what? A teaching tool. Ah, okay, I see what I'm doing. I see that I'm comparing my creativity. I see that I am denying my true nature. And so I decree this moment to be a valuable lesson of insight. I decree this moment, I decide this moment to be a moment of self-awareness, of a reset. I decide this moment to be one of great value rather than perpetuating the illusion. I decide that. So a lot of this is probably going to happen in your car, okay? I'm just telling you, while you're driving. I decide for this moment to be what? Look at the way I'm thinking. I decide for this moment to be observational. I decide for this moment to be self-aware. I decide for this moment to be something that is moving me out of the default by which I'm constantly at the servant of. And then, lastly, I say, what do I want to learn by demonstrating what I'm deciding? What do I want to learn now after deciding what this moment to be? What is this moment for? What is this moment for? What do I decide this moment to be? And then what have I learned by demonstrating my awareness or my decision of what I'm choosing? The biggest thing that we learn is that we are always within the power of deciding. No one decides for us. No one fixes it for us. No one placates. No one soothes. No one solves. Ultimately, than our own creation. And so this then is the thing by which we move into the greatest value of what you are. Do you want to value, let me put it this way, do you want other people to value you? Do you? And so what if I said that the degree by which you experience that value is the degree by which you value yourself? And it will never, that ratio will never change. So if you are feeling devalued, then what's happening? It's self-generated. And you see, we can complain and gossip and align ourselves with other people about how awful all these other people are because they're not valuing me, when really we're not saying, what is this moment for? What is this moment for? I'm feeling devalued. And what do I decide that this moment will be? This moment will be a reset because I see that I'm putting the responsibility of my value onto someone else. So this moment will be a reset where I will take my power back and I will start to value me. And what do I most learn by demonstrating this decision? That I've had that value all along. I've had that value all along. And that the only ceiling that exists for me in this world is a ceiling created by myself. That is our introduction into creativity for the month of May. Right? And there is nothing. And so don't be confused by the title today, Creative Confidence. I stole that from psychologist Albert Bandura. Do we need confidence in our creation, or do we just simply need to remember? So remember with me. If you'll take a deep breath in this morning, let's anchor this truth in. Let us ask ourselves, what is this moment for? This moment right now where we are going to affirm prayerfully truth. What is this moment for? It is a reset. And what am I going to decide that this affirmative prayer will be for me? I'm going to decide that it is an anchor or a deeply rooted knowing. And I'm going to understand that what I learn by demonstrating this affirmative prayer is that every time I return to affirmative prayer, I return to my roots. I return to that which I am. I am that which I am. I am creation itself. And so in this moment, I'm going to breathe differently. I'm going to breathe as creation. So I want you to breathe as creation. In this moment, I'm going to sit up straight because I'm going to sit up as creation. In this moment, I'm going to place my hand over my heart because my heart is the heartbeat. It's the pulse of creation. And in this moment, I'm going to say, I honor you. Honor it. And so I choose to exit this physical space differently than how I arrived. How I arrived could be fabulous, but how I exit is going to be uber fabulous. Because I'm going to have tapped into why it's necessary for me to be creation in the form that I am. And so with this knowing, I breathe in a willingness. I breathe in self-efficacy, the effectiveness of self. I breathe in the true joy of redemption. And it's self-redemption. Redemption that has been generated by me and no one else but by me. In bringing my life, my purpose, my creativity as an adjective, all of those things to the altar of that which is the universe. And I say, here, I'm ready to play. And now I want you to play with me. And it is in this divine exchange of energy that we move and we breathe and we have our being. And if you are willing to honor this as self, I invite you to breathe deeply and to anchor this prayer with me by saying, and so it is. Thank you.
Hi, I'm David Ault, and I simply want to say thanks. Thanks for taking the time to watch our broadcast here at Spiritual Living Center of Atlanta. We have a vision, and that vision is to reawaken all to their spiritual magnificence. And one of the ways that we are able to do that is through this very medium of broadcasting. So if you got anything out of this, if you felt in any way inspired, or if something spoke to you directly, then I extend an invitation to you to become a part of our family by donating. And there are many ways in order for you to be able to do that. One is to simply go to our website at slca.com. And there you will find all different kinds of prompts that will help you support what it is that we are doing here in Atlanta. One way is to become a pledger. That means that you decide on a monthly basis that you are going to help us with this vision. Another way is to donate through our management system called Fellowship One, another through PayPal, and another even easier way is on your cell phone. You can do what's called text to tithe, and that number is 404-796-7030. Again, thank you so much for your support, and I invite you to come back weekly to see what it is that we're up to. Blessings.